me to be here with you today, and for the last day and today. And thanks to Professor John Bosco Monti, and also to some extent thanks to Paulo Heg, a real warrior of agriculture. I had a chance to meet Paulo 2 years ago in Sudan. Until this morning, I've always been asking myself, what is this crazy Brazilian doing in Sudan? And to some extent even in Africa. Because the environment is so difficult indeed, as he was saying. I've been seeing him operate in Sudan, and as they say in French, chapeau, really. What I would like to do is explain a little bit about the other side of the equation. If you take a look at the saying that give a fish to a man, you feed him for 1 day. Teach him how to fish, it's for life, his life, for eternity. And again, that's exactly what these two gentlemen are doing with Africa. The other part is today. We need to deal with today's challenges, with today's problems, which Africa is facing. My presentation will have about 2-3 parts. First of all, I will present very briefly Cevital, who is Cevital, then the challenge which Africa faces, and indeed Algeria is no special case, and then discuss Cevital projects in Brazil to address some of these challenges. Who is Cevital? Cevital is a privately held company. It's a family company. The group's activities started in 1971. Turnover will be $5 billion this year, estimations. 15,000 employees, active in 6 different industries, of which the agribusiness is about 60%. Double-digit growth since year 2000, and reinvesting all its earnings year after year. Inception of Cevital, practically. We can do that because it's a family-owned business. Ranked first agro in Africa. Every year, Jeune Afrique, the magazine Jeune Afrique, does surveys to rank the 500 biggest companies. Number 1, I'm very proud to say, it's Sonatrach. It's the company from Algeria. It's number 1 in this ranking of 500. And then they rank by category. Cevital in that ranking of 500, I think comes something like around 50, position 50, but overall. But then when you go to the agro industry, for the last 2 years, we have taken actually position number 1. That's our chairman, Mr. Obrab, who his greetings, was supposed to be here to present these presentations, but unfortunately could not make it. So he appointed me to replace him. Cevital's group activities are in agriculture and nurseries, transformation of agro products, supermarkets and supply chains, logistics, primary industries and mining. In the primary industries, we produce float glass. Float glass, which is used for cars, for windows, constructions, everywhere. Practically the biggest industry in Africa, in this type of industry. Electronics and home appliances, we make our own refrigerator, air conditioning, cooking appliances, television sets, so all the electronics. Automotive and off-the-road equipment. Off-the-road equipment means excavators, front loaders, all of that equipment for civil engineering, road constructions, and so on. Cevital Group has adopted a growth model which saw its revenue grow practically, 35% annually from 2000 all the way to right now, and creation of jobs 1,500 every year practically. The group has actually started to invest overseas, and this year the group has purchased a large conglomerate in Europe called Fagor-Brunt. They make all types of appliances. So we bought them this year, and it's a group which adds, it's a company which adds to our group practically $2 billion in turnover on a yearly basis. So the secret here is the reinvestment of earnings again every year, and taking care of employees and customers. What I would like to do, maybe show you just a couple of minutes video of Cevital to show you the agro business industries complex which we have in the port of Nigeria.
Le complexe agroalimentaire de Cevital se situe dans la ville historique de Béjaïa. Agroalimentaire de Cevital se situe dans la ville historique de Béjaïa, à quelques 250 km à l'est d'Alger. Installés au sein même du port, nous bénéficions d'une situation idéale pour tous nos échanges commerciaux. Notre complexe raffine du sucre de canne et des corps gras alimentaires. Il est doté de silos de stockage portuaire d'une capacité de 180 000 tonnes pour le sucre. La raffinerie de sucre entrera en production au premier semestre 2009. D'une capacité de 3000 tonnes par jour et dotée de silos de 230 000 tonnes additionnelles, elle nous placera comme le plus important exportateur de sucre de la région. Avec notre raffinerie d'huile végétale, nous disposons d'une capacité de 1800 tonnes par jour pour les corps gras alimentaires, liquides et solides. Installation ultramoderne, entièrement automatisée, et notre savoir-faire nous permettent de raffiner tout type d'huile, y compris les compositions nutritionnelles les plus sophistiquées. Notre installation de corps gras solide est équipée des lignes les plus modernes. Le mode de transport permet de couvrir quotidiennement l'ensemble du marché national et les exploitations limitrophes. Nichée au cœur du massif de haute montagne de Djurdjura, notre nouvelle unité de boisson de Lala Redidja bénéficie d'une eau minérale particulièrement pure et légère, captée dans un environnement de montagne préservé. Assurément, Cevital est une dynamique de croissance.
Thank you. This is just an example of actually two of our industries. We have many others for juices, tomato, other types of fruits, and also nurseries. I have to go back to. Okay. So the reason for us being here in Brazil and also trying to do our projects in Brazil is to be able to feed, first of all, to feed these factories with raw material, with oil from seeds of soja, with sugar, raw sugar, and many other types of products we will be importing from here. The challenges facing Algeria, but importantly Africa, are food production, availability of water, job creation and social inclusion, development of infrastructure, renewable energy, and many others, governance, education. But the most important is the food challenge. The food challenge because there is demographic growth and rural exodus, which makes less and less people working in the fields, diminishing arable land because of rain pattern diminishing every year, environmental and climatic changes. If you take a look at the demographic challenge, the population of Africa is growing every year. By year 2050, we will have about 2 billion people in Africa. This combined with two other problems, which is the life expectancy. There are actually three problems here. One is population growth. Second, the life expectancy rising. And then the third is people moving from the land to the cities. And all of this spell into a problem of food production, food availability. If you take a look at the per capita net food imports in Africa, it has been rising steadily since the 60s. In 2007, you see a spike. That's because of the problems of 2000 to 2008. But eventually that came down, but however, the trend continued. And Africa today imports practically all of its basic food, whether it's cereal, wheat, corn, rice, dairy products, you name it. Africa imports it today. They import more than they produce. So it's a big problem. And the interesting thing is, the irony, as I mentioned here, is that a major part of this food is imported by Asian, Europeans, and North American traders from Brazil to Africa, often at very high intermediation costs. The pressure on food security cases in point. A world crisis in the production of supply of basic necessity foods, staples, is likely in the years to come. The world food has never been, in terms of stocks, so low as currently. Probably about 30 days of stock. If no one produces anymore, in 30 days, every country will have problem. Imagine you have I have lived some of these problems. If you have supply that stops coming into your local markets, into your local supermarket, or 3 days, you will see people rioting to buy the last piece of bread or the last can of food or whatever. 3 days after the supply ends. Here, in terms of world, it's about 30 days. A global climatic mishap will see the supply of food being cut even for those who have the money to buy it. In 2007, Vietnam has suspended the export of its rice because of the problems of the financial markets in the world in raw materials. Consequently, you have the hunger riots in Senegal, in Ivory Coast, and elsewhere in Africa. Following the trend, Russia stopped the export of its wheat in 2008 during the financial crisis 2007 and 2008. Today, Brazil, China, India, Indonesia, Mexico, the BRICS, they total about 50% of world population, with high demands for food, for goods because of their purchasing power. So that puts a huge constraint on the world supply. For example, 10 years ago, the Chinese per capita consumption of sugar was 5 kilos. Today, it's about 12 kilos. Algeria is 34 kilos per person per year. In the in Europe, it's 48. US, 54. As you can see, there is still a big gap between the consumption of the so-called advanced countries vis-a-vis the other countries. There will be huge more demand. The challenges facing Algeria. Sorry? 5 minutes. Okay, then essentially what faces Algeria is exactly the same as what faces Africa in general. Yeah, growing population, growing rank of jobless people, diminishing agricultural output. Therefore, Cevital is taking the lead to come to Brazil to provide the source of the raw material for its industries, and by the same way to Africa. The food supply chain. Today, between Algeria and Brazil, there are 4 billion exchange. Cevital represents about 60% of that, importing raw sugar, soybean oil, soybean meal, and so on. Initiatives and projects in Brazil: logistics for grain and cereal, port and terminal infrastructure, agribusiness transformation, fertilizers, clinker and cements for imports. In Brazil, for those who do not know Brazil, the biggest region producing these raw materials is Mato Grosso. So far, Mato Grosso has been transporting these goods down to the southern ports, whether it's the port of Paranaguá or Santos, or at a high cost. Now there is a new initiative to transport them to the north through the corridors, different corridors. So in our case, we are planning, we have a project to install silos around the regions producing this raw material, transporting them to Itaituba, Miritituba, from there by barge to Santarém, and from Santarém or Belém out to Africa by ships. In the fields, we will be installing silo systems, capacity of 115 to 200,000 tons. We will be installing ports and operating barges and ships between the fluvial and maritime. And we will be transporting the goods again on a fluvial, on barges and maritime. And on the other side, we will be receiving the goods. We will be receiving the goods and transporting them to North Africa, Algeria, Morocco, Western Africa, Eastern Africa. So those are the logistic platforms which we will be installing as part of this large project. These are some of the units that we are planning to install there. Cereal bulk container, bulk grain and cereal terminals. Production of fertilizers and distribution to come back with the ships so that you don't have to bring water in ships. In conclusion, the problems that I have mentioned in terms of food scarcity and food security problems, we believe that we have a way to resolve the problem in the case of Algeria. And we hope to expand that to the rest of Africa. We're here, we're looking for help from BNDES and from the African Bank of Development to realize this project of mutual benefit both for Brazil and for Africa. Thank you for your patience and your time.